In this video, we're going to be taking a look at how we can take our proxy canon and start turning that into our game res mesh that we have. So you can see here's the scene that we were working on before, and I just have wireframe unshaded turned on. And this is the different components that we have for the proxy model that we've got. And I'm going to start showing you how we can start taking these models and making them a bit more efficient. The first thing that I did for this project was I just imported in the high-res mesh that you see here. I have it hidden right here like this, but it was pretty easy to go to that scene file that we made before in where we imported in all the high-res meshes to kind of check that out. And so I just went to File and then Import into the option box and then set that to My Binary and went and navigated to where we have the My Binary file saved off for where we imported in all the high-res meshes. So that came in and I just grabbed everything just like you see here, and he hit Control G and that'll make a group, and I call the group high res. And so if I show that, I'll hit Shift H to show that. You can see here's all the high res. I'll turn off the wireframe unshaded on that. And so with this group, it should be pretty easy for me to just tap W for the move key, and then I can just move it off to the side, and you can see we've got the high res part here, and everything should match up and line up to where the game res is. So I'll just put this back on the channel box, put that back to 0, and I'll go ahead and hide that. So we can hit Control H for that. The other thing we could do is we could select it and we can make a new layer group, and we could call this high res like this. High res, and then underscore, and I'll just get rid of that 1 at the end like that and hit save. And now we can just kind of turn this thing on and off and use layers to turn things on and off. That might make things just a little bit easier for us. Okay, the next thing I want to show you is the proxy version of this cannon that we made is, I don't know, it feels a little bit chunky to me. So like if I select everything right now, and I take a look at the overall polygon count that we've got, and if we go to display, heads up display, and make sure that polygon count is on, you should be able to see these numbers up in here. So if we select all the different pieces here, you can see the number of tries that we have are set to be about 5,084. And so I do have a high-res wheel on there. So that was in smooth mesh preview mode. I just have one for that. Let me reselect everything and then just take a look. So we're really at 2,428. So I want my overall count to be maybe around 5,000. That's what I'm going to give a target for myself, but don't have to be such a stickler about that. But so we're going to go from 2,000 to adding some polys on here. So this feels a little bit chunky to me. We could get away with this as our game res mesh, but you can see we see the polygon kind of faceting on there. I'm going to show you a technique that we could do to kind of fix that up. So I'm just going to take the cannon barrel and I'll just duplicate it, Control D, and I'll just middle mouse drag that up underneath there, and then I'll call this up res like this. And I'm going to take the other one and hide it, select it, hit Control H to hide it. So we got this. If we tap 3 for our smooth mesh preview, like that. So if you tap 3 on yours probably looks a little bit different than mine. I'm going to show you how to hold edges with creasing. So if I hit F10 or right click on here and say edge, and we select all the edges within here, and you shift right click, and we can get to the crease tool that way. I believe under modeling, if we go to mesh tools, Crease is under there as well. So there's 2 different areas that you can find this, and you can middle mouse drag left or right. If you middle mouse drag right, it'll make everything hard edge, and if you drag everything left, it'll make everything kind of soft edge like what it normally is when you start off. So this tool works. I can double click this ring here and then middle mouse drag that. I can double click this ring here and I can move that out. Double click this one and middle mouse, and it doesn't have to be 100% hard. Like, so if I middle mouse drag to the right, it's going to really harden that up, and if I just do just slightly, you can see we can get just a little bit of curvature in there. So depending on what you want to get for that, you can do that. So I'm going to take these rings here, middle mouse drag that here, and this one here, and then I'm going to double click this, holding shift and double click on this to add these. Now I'm just going to middle mouse drag, not all the way completely hard, but a little bit soft in through there like that. So I'll double click these. let me do all these together because I want this value of this, this, and this to be the same across all these three ridges. So I need to do that all at the same time. So you'll see what I mean in just a second. So I'm going to hold down Shift, double click these. I'm going to get these in order. Just make them completely hard. And then now I'm going to double click this, holding down Shift, and adding a selection for these like this. And then this one here. And then we'll middle mouse drag. We can take it all the way to the right, and it's completely hard, and then I can kind of maybe back off that just a little bit. So it's kind of just a little bit rounded out. And that's kind of what I'm looking for in that case for this. And I can double click this and harden those up. And let's just do this one and then this one in through here like that. So I think that looks pretty good. I might take this in here and harden that up. So now we've got a piece of geometry that was our game res mesh. I'm going to hit F8 to go into object mode here. So, and then we can tap 3, and then we can do a basically a smooth mesh preview of this. Now, if we want to turn this into actual geometry, we can do this. We can go to modify, and we'll go convert, and then we'll do smooth mesh preview to polygons, and that'll turn it into actual polygons. So we got tons of polygons now. Don't want that many. We can go over here to the channel box like this, go on the smooth face node that it made, and the divisions put that down to 1, and you can see it's going to drop it down. If you put it on 0, you can actually get it down to the lowest version, just like that. So these are like ZBrush, where you've got subdivision levels kind of on here. So I'll put that on 1. So this is what I want. I do want to hold this. I'm going to duplicate it and just push it up here under this up res, and I'll just call this 02. Let's call this 01, like that. And I'm going to hide this one because these are just kind of like different stages. So right now I've got more curvature going this way, and that's what I want. But I don't need all these polygons going through here. So this is what I'm going to show you what we're going to do. We're going to hit F10, and we can double click on here, holding down Shift like this, and we can hit Control Backspace, and it'll get rid of those pieces there. Anywhere where you have a flat like this, Control Backspace, I don't need all that extra geo like that. So this has got a little bit of curvature to it, so I'll just keep maybe that, hold down Control and Backspace. So I'm going to keep maybe this one. I'll get rid of this one, and let's just leave this right here like that. But I don't need this. I don't need this. This does nothing for me for the shape, so I'll hit Control Backspace for that. So I'm just holding down Control, just double clicking, and then hold down Shift. I don't need these parts in here. Control Backspace, and that'll get rid of that. And while we're hitting, if you just hit Backspace, it'll get rid of it. But if there's any verts left over, Control Backspace will get rid of the verts too at the same time. So I'm just holding down Shift, selecting this, like this, and that's not what I was hoping for. Right there, like that. Holding down Shift, grabbing that. Okay, let's go in that direction. There we go. And we got that. Control Backspace. That'll get rid of that. I don't need this one down the center. Control Backspace. And don't need this one here. Control Backspace. And what could help is if we want to just isolate select this. I'm going to delete history, Alt-Shift-D. Get used to that. You definitely need to delete history quite a bit. If we hit Control 1, we can go into the isolate select mode. So if we go into show, we're doing this view selected, and that just isolates the model for us. So we're just taking a look at it, and I'll hit F10, Control Backspace. Let's see here. Let's get rid of this and this. We don't need this one in here. Control Backspace, and we don't need this in through here. Now watch what we can do with all this geo in here. We hit F9, select this, and you can hit Shift, and then there's an arrow key. It's the basically by the M and the question mark key, there's a period and comma key. So if you do Shift period key or the arrow, that'll grow a selection, and if you do comma, it'll shrink it. So we can grow this selection out. Actually, yeah, so I'll need that. I'm going to take all these verts and then merge them to the center. So we can Shift right click and say merge vertices to center, just like that. And then now we've got all those merged to the center. So I actually can go grow that selection out again, select this one, Shift, and then period key, and then let's go Shift right click, merge vertices to center, just like that. And we can do the same thing for this here. Let's grow that out. I'll just tab G for my last command, just like that. And so one thing we could do to like reduce polygons within here is we could take some of this stuff like these guys. Let's select this vert, Shift add selection to that, and I'm just going to put in the move tool, tap W, just to make sure I'm only selecting these guys, because we could accidentally select something way back there and then merge it. That would be bad. So and the other thing, we can tap 4 to make sure we do not have anything else selected. I just tapped F there to kind of frame in on that. Okay, I'll tap 5 to go back to wireframe. And then now I can do Shift, right click, and say merge vertices to center. So let's say we do those 3. Then I'll tap Q to make it easier to select this. And Shift right click, say merge vertices to center, just like that. And let's do these 3 together. I'll tap G for my last command, like that. These 3 together, tap G for that. And do these 3. These 3. And if I was paying attention to the pattern on this, we do have like this thing left over and through here. Not a big deal. So it's not a perfect pattern. I could have just merged 2 together for that, but I'll just leave that for now. Now we can hit F10. I'm going to double click on this, holding down Shift, and we'll use that same technique we did before to get rid of these. So select them all and hit Control Backspace, and you can see we got rid of that. So it makes it a lot simpler inside of here. Just like this, Control Backspace, like that. So a lot more simplified. I'll hit F8 and Alt-Shift-D to delete history on that. Now we might need to unlock the normals. Let's try this. Let's go to Mesh Display, unlock normals, and we'll just do Mesh Display, soften edge, and try to soften everything up. So it doesn't look all that great, but this should bake okay from the high res down to this. If you do have any kind of issues baking, then we might want to do this. We might want to select the object and then go to Mesh Display, soften harden edges, and then do like an angle of, let's say, like 15. Hit apply for that. Now that will put hard edges on stuff. So I put hard edges on like here. I put it on here too, this and this. So that's all kind of what I'm hoping for, but we might want that to be a little bit lower. So once it's made, we can go to the node over here and just maybe make it even lower, or see, that's making all hard edges. So maybe we put that to 20 and then take a look. And let's try 30, maybe even 40, 45, something like that. So even with something like 45, it's just holding these particular hard edges. Now that it will bake over with the high res, but these high res or these hard edges will show up in the bake. So I'll hit Control 1 to bring everything back. And again, if that doesn't work, sometimes it doesn't work for you, you can just go to Show, Isolate Selected, View Selected. So we've got that, and now let's show the high res on here and just make sure everything's kind of lining up with everything, right? So I'll turn high res off. We'll select this piece again, and you can see that our polygon count for this is now 1,778 polys, which is pretty high. But again, we'll work on the other pieces and try to get them in line. So there's that for the cane and barrel. The next thing I want to show you is the wheel. So if I tap 3 for that, we got smooth mesh preview on that. Let me show you what I did for this group to make this, because it was just a little bit tricky. If I show this group, Shift H to show that, it's 2 different pieces, and that's what we made for our proxy like this. I'm going to duplicate this group, Control D, just like this, middle mouse drag it up here in the stack, and we'll just leave it like there. We'll just hide this one, Control H to hide it. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to use a boolean on this. So if I just straight up take this object and this object, and I go to modeling and we go to mesh booleans and do a union on it, we can get these to join together. It works. The only problem is Maya sometimes has issues with this piece of geometry right here. If we go to shift right click and use the multi-cut tool, or go to the modeling toolkit and use multi-cut, it'll split across some of the angles, but some of them it starts to have issues with. So you can see this big polygon that it made back here. You can see this kind of line that's going up there. So it makes some funky geometry. What we can do to help this out is this. We can take this model, we can take the face on here, and we can shift right click, we can extrude the face, and then we'll offset this and pull this in just a bit like that. And then now whenever we boolean, let's take this and we'll go to mesh boolean union. And now it does a much better job of like kind of pulling these things together. We're going to delete this Alt Shift D like that, right? And what I noticed, if we tap 3 for the smooth mesh preview, we got some funky stuff going on for the geo in here. It shouldn't look like that. So basically, if I select these verts, I can move these around, and you can see it's not connected quite a bit. But if we just drag a marquee around all our verts, there's a tool within here. We can shift right click and say merge vertices, go to merge vertices, and do the option box, and we can do a low kind of threshold, so 0.01, and that means that anything within this threshold area, like distance, if it's within that threshold, it'll merge it together. So the bigger the threshold is, like you might merge 3 of these together. Let's just put on like one real quick. And if we do that, we might get something like that. If we put it on, let's do like 5. See how it just kind of merged all that stuff together? And if we go down, let's do like 3. Still merging everything. Do 1, try that 1 again. Nope, so 1's not going to do it. 2, see how it kind of merged those together because of that threshold. So if it's low enough, we can merge all those verts together. Now if we do tap 3 for smooth mesh preview, you can see how that piece of geo is kind of working like that. Now if you remember from before, what we can do with this is also take this face, and we can shift right click and say extrude, and then middle mouse for the offset. Let's take this face that you see here, and then shift right click and say merge face to center, and then I'll hit F11 and do this back here. I'll just tap G for my last command. And then now we got a wheel, and if you think about the creasing tool, like what we just did, if we right click and say edge, or hit F10, double click this, holding down shift, and double clicking these edges to select them, and then shift right click to say crease tool, we can middle mouse drag that to the right, and then we can crease this thing up, and we'll take this and crease this up as well. So now we've got this wheel that goes in and out of the like kind of base cage, and then tap 3 for this. But now we need to convert that over to polygons. This is just smooth mesh preview. So let's go to modify and say convert smooth mesh preview to polygons, and that's super high. We'll go to the channel box, go to this poly smooth face, and put that on 1. And let's delete the history for it. Alt Shift D and object mode. That'll get rid of all that history that we had over there. Now we need to go through that cleanup process, and we'll just double click this, hit Control Backspace on some of these, like that. Okay. And then if you remember that trick we did from before, we'll tap 4, hit F9 to grow our verts out, shift period key like this, and then Shift, right click, say merge vertices to center, and I'll grab this back one, Shift period key, and Shift right click, say merge vertices to center, just like that. Now we'll tap 5 for this, and you can see we're in a pretty good shape to have everything set for the wheel. So let's do the smooth normals thing again, and delete history, Alt Shift D, and we're going to go to mesh display, and then we'll just use that soften harden edges like we were doing before, and we could put this on, I don't know, something like 25, something like that. And now we got a nice wheel that's kind of been worked on. So let's take this wheel and just move it up and through here. Okay, and we can call this wheel back left, maybe final or something like that, right? Okay, now that we have that wheel done, a little bit later we'll be able to duplicate the wheels across the board, and we'll have 4 different wheels that are all at this resolution. I'm just going to save that for a little bit later. I'm going to hop on to this sidewall. So if we turn on the wireframe on shaded for this, you can take a look at that, and let's go ahead and see what we should do for this. Let's open up this in the geo area, go to template, and open up the Canon. And I've got this side left, and I've got these different blocks that we've got here. So I'm just going to select this, hold down control, and add these different blocks here. What I want to do is join them all together and make this into one piece. So I'm going to group this. I'm going to hit Control G and just call this side wall like that. And maybe I'll middle mouse drag that up to the top right in here. So I'll just duplicate that, and we'll have a copy of this. Let's take this and hide it. So I'm going to hit Control H like this, and we'll open up the sidewall right here like that. And what I know that I'm going to do, I'm going to add some splits to this. I'm going to put a split here, a split on this one here, and a split on this one here. So that way we can actually join them together a little bit later. So we're just going to use the multi-cut tool. I can do Shift and then right click and say multi-cut. And then we can drag from, like, let's just say from here, and I drag across, and if I hold down, let's see, as I drag here, if I hold down Shift and Control at the same time, it'll snap to a 90-degree increment for us for slicing across there. So I'll hit Q to go out of the tool, and then I could tap G for my last command. I'm just going to go right here, hold down Shift and Control, do that right there like that. Hit Q to go out of that tool, select this one, tab G, or Y is the last tool, actually G's last command. So I'll hold down Shift and Control and just add this here like this, and hit Q to go out of this. Okay, and then I'm going to select this face here like this. You can see I can barely select it. You can tap 4 if you need to see through it, or 5, whichever one you want to do. 5 is the shaded mode. So I'm just going to hit backspace on this one. I'm going to select this one, hit backspace, and I'm going to select here on this one and hit backspace. Now on the bottom of these, I don't need the bottom face, so I'll just tap 4 to just draw through this and select something like this here, and then hold down Control and deselect. So I'll get rid of this one. Now I'll select this one here. I'll just drag through all those just like that with a marquee on the faces, and hold down Control, and I'll deselect that, so that way I get that face. I'll just grab this one. I'll do the same thing. Just drag on here, hold down Control, and deselect these. Get rid of that. So I guess I need also on this thing, I need something for this. So I want to combine it together with the base of this. So I'll do this. I'll do Shift right click and use the multi-cut tool, and I'll drag on here. Actually accidentally grabbed the wrong tool. That was the insert multi tool. Let's see, Shift right click, multi-cut. Yeah, I was doing that insert edge loop tool, I think, with multiple edges on there. So I'll drag right here, right in this area, come over here, hold down Shift and Control, and just do this like that. And then I will go from here to here, and then I'll tap Q for that. Let's just select this face right here and get rid of it. Now that we have verts, let's hit F9. Let's take this, put on the move tool, W, hold down V to temporarily turn on vert snapping that you see here, and then I'll just snap this in here after it auto saves. And I'll take this, I'll just snap it here, take this one and move it, hold down V, and then snap here. I'll move to the front, take this, hold down V, and then snap to this right here, like that. Okay, let's take this part, this geo, take these verts, and hold down V, snap to that, take that one, hold down V, snap to that. So let's go here on here, and just hold down V, snap here, and you can see I'm grabbing that little tiny circle to do this snapping. So I select that, V, snap here, snap here. One thing I didn't do on this one, if I hit F11, if I tap 4 to see through this, I think I've got a face on the bottom there. Holding down Control to deselect. Unless, nope, it's there. So hold down Control, deselect that, and then get rid of it. Okay, so now I should have all the pieces that I need. Let's tap 5. Now we can combine these together. So I'm going to select this, hold down Shift, and add these together. Okay, and what I'm going to do is just go and say Mesh, Combine. Delete the history on it, and I'm going to take all the verts, hit F9, select all these, and then I'm going to Shift right click and say Merge Vertices, and do the option box for this Merge Vertices with a really low threshold. So let's do 0.001, and hit Apply for that, and if we tap 3, I know it's going to be a funky looking smooth mesh preview, but we can check and make sure like everything's welded together, and so there's no holes or anything else like that, so that's okay. We've got a big end gun and it's going to look like that, so that just tells me that we merged everything together and everything's good for that. I'm going to hit F8 to go to object mode. You can cycle back and forth between object and component mode, delete history, and that's Alt-Shift-D to delete that, right? So we've got this other side on the side right, and let's just group this and call this sidewall right, like this, and I'm just going to move it up here because what I'm going to do is just hide it like that, Control H, and the reason I'm going to hide it is because we're going to take this and we're going to mirror it across. We're going to go mesh, and then we're going to mirror, and then we're going to mirror across the x-axis, and we're going to do it in the negative direction, and we're going to tell it to merge together with the original, just like that. So now we've got this going on here. Right here, like that. Okay, now what we can do is try to make this a little bit more efficient. So if I do Shift, right click, and multi-cut tool, like if I go from here to, let's say here, I know I don't necessarily need geometry going down the center, but I'm just going to keep it there so we can just keep merging here. Hit F10 to get rid of this edge. Hit F9, select verts, get rid of verts. So that's going to be a pretty normal and standard kind of thing that we would be doing with the geometry. Now we could leave all the splits going in through here. If you wanted to be really efficient with everything, you could do something like this where we do like a target weld. So let's go to the modeling toolkit, and if you use target weld, you can take a vert and click and drag and move it over the top of another one, and it'll actually merge them together. It's really nice whenever that tool actually works. Sometimes I have trouble with that, so let me show you what I do if I have trouble with that. I'll just do F9, select it. You know how to vert snap. We just tap V, and then I can take this down to here, and I would hold down V and tap it down to here. If I select these verts, Shift right click and say Merge Vertices, we can do a Merge Vertices with a low threshold, and that will weld everything together. So you could either use the target weld, and like I said, it's great whenever it actually works. When it doesn't work, not so great, and then you would have to use maybe this method here. So the other thing we should probably do is just get rid of any kind of end guns that we've got. This is a big giant end gun. And what we can do is we can Shift right click, and we can do triangulate faces. So we can do that and select the back one, just tap G for our last command for this. And again, because we're working with symmetry, we want this to be symmetrical on this side. I'm going to just go to mesh and then do mirror, since we've already set that up. Select it and delete the history on this wall. And I'm just going to call this side wall like that, and I'll just middle mouse drag this up into the cannon and put it at the top right here like that. So let's take a look and see. I don't really want to do anything more to the geometry here. I'm just going to select all this and kind of see where we're at from a tries standpoint. So if I did take this and I've got the side, I've got the wheel. Let's just group this and call this wheel front left, like that, for that group. And let's take these two, and I'll call this wheel front right, like this. And I'll just put it right under here, middle mouse drag it like that. And then we got this one, group it, and I'll call this wheel rear right. I might as well put it, middle mouse drag it right under here, like this one. So I'm going to take these groups, hide them. And if I select this and tap the up arrow key, I can grab the group for that, and I can hit Control H to hide that. So let's just take this wheel and we'll duplicate it and we'll move it, and I'll just hold down V to snap right here on the center vert right here. So if I hold down V, I should be able to select that and just snap it right to the center there like that. Let's call this wheel front left final, like that. And I'll duplicate this thing, hit Shift P to unparent it like this, and hit Control G, and I just grouped it. And then now what I can do is I'll go to the channel box and give it a negative scale, -1 in the X scale to put it over there, and then I can just Shift P to unparent it. So I just use that to give it a negative scale and put it in the right position, so I can get rid of that group. And then this is wheel front right final. Now we do have some negative history on there and translation and everything else like that. Like if we look at this one, maybe to translate Z set to 75, we can go modify freeze transformations, and we'll turn on translate and rotate and scale and hit apply for that. And then we'll do the same thing for this one, hit apply just like that. And then if we take this and duplicate it and then hold down V and we snap to that vert right here, it's going to put us right in the center of that. And then I'll go freeze transformations again. Now this is going to be wheel rear right final, like that. And then I'll put this on the side right. Okay, now let's take a look at our polygon count that we've got going on here. Let's select everything and see. So we're still at well under like 5,000. So this gives us the opportunity where if we wanted to do some extra special stuff to things, we could maybe bevel some edges and things like that. So like if we went here, let's say we go like this. I'm just going to go not do everything. I'm going to just try to grab some parts of this. And this is because we have some polygon count to play with. I'm going to bevel that. I want to bevel this. So I'm just holding down Shift as I add these. I don't know if I want to do that one or not. Let's try it. We'll see what happens. So I want that, and I think I've got everything I need here on this side. I'm going to select this. And then I'm just going to Shift, right click and say bevel edge, fraction, 0.2, segments, I'll just put this at 1, like this. So I think that's going to be enough of a bevel for me. If we want, we can pump that up to 0.25. I don't want to go too high with it. Like say we go 0.5, that's a little bit, maybe just a little bit too thick. So maybe 0.4 is about as high as I would go with this. But if you can afford it, the beveling has a pretty nice effect to it. So I'll hit F8, I'll hit Alt-Shift-D to delete history. So that's in green because it's in object mode. Now we'll go back to mesh and we'll mirror across. And so now let's do that again. Mesh, mirror, and now we got our beveling going across everywhere. Now that's going to introduce some n-gons potentially, so you might have to go through and Shift right click and say triangulate face, something like that. So just be on the lookout for some of that might happen to you while you're beveling. So I think that's pretty good on there. So let's hit F8 and then we'll do this mesh. We'll mirror it again delete the history on it. And then I'm going to go to this guy here, and I'm going to select all the edges on it, and I just don't want it to bevel this, and if I tap 4, if I look at this bottom thing, I don't want it to bevel that. But other than that, I want it to bevel everything. So I'm going to shift right click and say bevel edge. And because this is such a simple object, I'm going to do a fraction of 0.2 and maybe 0.15. Something like this, and I'm going to leave the segments. I'll leave it at 2, so it splits an extra one right down the center. And that's going to give some nice kind of rounding to stuff. I'm going to hit F8, go to object mode, Alt-Shift-D, delete history on that. And I think this is a pretty good resolution on this. If I select these, get rid of them, I can turn those into quads just like that. And then I'll select these edges. Let's go ahead and bevel these. Shift right click, bevel. And because it's so low res, I'm going to do the segments too, just like we did last time. Just kind of leave it there. I'm going to take the verts on this and I'm going to pull it in just a little bit just to make sure it's like intersecting with that. Okay. I'll delete the history on there. Alt Shift D. And I think that's looking pretty good. Now the only thing that I see on this one is that if we tap 3 for the smooth mesh preview on this piece, if we shift right click and go to crease tool, let's middle mouse drag these and kind of crease this out, and I think this is probably where you want to be for everything. Hit F8 and then hit Control 1 to isolate select on this and take a look. I think that looks good. So the other thing we can do is select these edges and get rid of this to build this pattern if we wanted. Okay, now that we have this pattern established, let's go ahead and take a look at the rest of the model. So we're going to do show, isolate, select, view selected. You can hit Control 1 for that. So again, this shape that we got right here, this should be pretty easy. I'll just go to the object mode, right click, say object mode, or hit F8. I'll hit Control 1 to do the isolate select. Now if we tap 3 for this one, since I don't have a face on the end of that, it should make this nice and smooth. So I can hit Control 1 for that. So on this shape here, we'll select it, and then we're in object mode, Control 1. And I don't have the end pieces there, so I'll just tap 3. And you can see how it rounds out. I want to keep this nice and crisp for these edges here. Let's hit F10, or you can right click on here and say edge, double click on here, holding down shift, adding this, and then we'll crease that. So shift right click, say crease tool, middle mouse drag to the right, and we've got this nice and creased. Hit F8, delete history, Alt Shift D for that, and then I'll tap Q to go out of the tool and hit Control 1 just to go back out. Now we can leave this model as is, and we're always going to have these hard line and intersections in here on this, and we could do that, or we could actually cut these in. So if you're going to cut this in, you're going to have to do something like this. Shift right click over object mode, go to multi-cut tool. If I hold down Control, I'd have to get right close to there. Let's just tap 1 and see where we're at with the geo. So I'll cut right there on that. Let's go select this in object mode, hit F8 for that, and tap 1. Now what I could do is just take this thing, and I'm going to tap 4 to see through this. I'm going to go to the vert on here, hit F9 like this, and then we're going to go to mesh. I need to find the chamfer tool, so we're going to do chamfer vertices, and if I do that, it's going to give this width that I can do. And if I hold down Control, it'll give finder control of this. So let's tap 5 so we can see what we're doing here, and you can see with this width I can get it pretty darn close to that right there, like that. Okay, let's tap F8 like that, and if we go on the inside of this, I was going to see if I could fly on the inside of that and look at that. No, let's just tap 4. And if I select this face that we've got here, like that, let's just get rid of it. So we don't need that face anymore. And we don't need the faces on this right here. So I'll hit F10. I'll double click that loop like that and hit Control F11. Select faces, hit backspace, get rid of that. So now we got something that we can start welding together. I'm just going to take these points off of here and then move them and snap them. So I'm going to hold down V and move it to each one of these points, just like this, right here like that, and just keep snapping along like this. And almost there. Okay. Now let's go shaded mode like this. Tab 5. And it's going to save just real quick. Let's take this piece and this piece. We'll delete history, Alt-Shift-D, and we're going to combine them together. So we're going to go to Mesh, and we're going to combine. Before I do that, I'm going to keep this and this together. I'm going to group it, hit Control-G, call this back lid, something like that. And I'll duplicate it, Control-D, just hide this one, Control-H, and then I'll take these parts and I'll mesh, and I'll do combine them together, delete history, Alt-Shift-D, and then let's just drag this underneath the back lid right here. So I'm going to middle mouse drag it, and then I'm going to drag this on top of here. Maybe I'll call this combined like that. And then now if we tap 3, we can see what we got. It's going to make a hard edge, but we don't want that. We want to join everything together. Let's take our verts, F9, drag a marquee over it, shift right click, say merge vertices, and do merge vertices option box, and with the low threshold, hit apply. So now I'll tap 3 and you can see what we got. Now at this point, we got this nice curvature to it. What I could do is I can hit F10 and I can double click this edge loop that we got here and shift right click, bevel edge, segments. Let's take that down to 1 like that. And now we got something like this. Now let's tap 3 for it and you can see what we got going on here. The next part is if we don't want any of those edges to show up on here, we'd have to cut this in too for that, and that's going to be a bit more difficult of a problem to kind of tackle. Doesn't mean we can't, it just means it's going to be a little bit more difficult. So if we do this, we shift right click on here and say multi-cut tool. Let's do one side right here. Let's kind of do this, and I'm going to drag out from like this point to this corner, hit Y. I'll click right here and drag out, hit enter. I'll take this and we'll go straight across holding down Control and Shift. I'll hit enter. That'll make a straight line going across. I'll go drag from here and hold down Control and Shift, and I'll make a straight line going here. I'll tap Q to go over that tool, F10. I'm going to select this edge, hit F9, get rid of these extra verts that we got here. Let's see what we got at this point, and now we can take this piece and let's go ahead and hit F9. And I'll tap 4 to see through the model. And I can put on the move tool, W, and I'm hold down V. I'm just going to snap right here, and I'm going to snap right here, like that. And the other thing I'm going to do, I'm going to mirror this piece across, because I'm building one half. And so we'll say mesh, and we'll mirror. We'll do cut geometry across the world axis, X, and we're going to go from a positive X to negative. And we're going to do a merge and combine. We'll do a custom threshold that's really small and apply like that. And now we got this, right? So now we can tap 4. We can select these faces, get rid of this, like that. Tap 5. Let's just take a look with everything all together. Let's take a look with this. I'm going to hold down Shift. I'm going to hit Control 1 just to isolate, select, make sure we're not doing anything funky with this. Make sure nothing crazy is happening. Let's select this. It looks like something odd kind of happened there. And maybe I can select F9. Let's see what this is. Looks like it's just a stray vert. So I'm going to F9. Move this and snap it right here, and then I'll just shift right click, merge vertices to center, just like that. Okay, let's tap 3 for this, and that should smooth out there just like we would expect. That's fine. I'll tap 1 on this. So that's giving us that thing with the hole. We're going to need a new kind of hole in this. So let's go here to this thing, and they'll shift right click and we'll say multi-cut tool, and let's go here and here like this. And what I'm going to do is hit F10, scale it, and extrude out this way. We'll move it, and let me see if we can move this along a orientation. If we do custom, I think we can set this to an edge, and let's just click this edge, and then now we can kind of move this thing just right along this right here, like that. So it's not going to be perfect, but it's going to be good enough. Okay, I'm going to hit F8 like this. I'm going to shift multi-cut tool, go from here to here like this, go from here to here like this, and I'm going to cut across like this and cut across here like that. Okay, and let's mirror this thing across again. So I'm going to take this and we'll do mesh, we'll do mirror like that, delete history. Let's tap 3. We can kind of see what it is that we're building here. I'll hit F11. I can get rid of this face, this face. Let's tap 1. Tap 4 for this, just to make sure we're not getting rid of anything super important. Okay, looks like we're good there. And now I'll tap 5. Now for this model, looks like we don't need this. We don't need the bottom of this. Tap 4. So let's just get rid of this right here like that. Let's take these verts, F9, and I'll move them and I'll snap them to this here, snap this here. I'll take this, snap it here, and this one, snap it here. And I think I'm going to just run a split down the center of that. That will probably make life a lot easier for the top and the bottom. So let's watch this. Shift, right click, multi-cut tool, and I'm going to hold down Shift as I click right in the middle. That should snap it right in the middle there. And then what I'm going to do now is take F9, take this vert on here. And what do we got? I'm going to take this W, V, move it here, snap this here. And I need to add a split down the backside too. Okay. So let's go F8, object mode, shift, right click, multi-cut tool. And if I go on the back side of this, and I do control and I hold down shift, I can get something right in the middle. Tap Q, F9, W, holding down V, just snapping. And I'll take this and I'll snap there too. Okay, there we go. I'm going to delete Alt-Shift D for history. I'm going to delete history on this, Alt-Shift D. And now, let's combine this together with this. Okay, I'm going to take the handle and the back lid, combine them. So let's do this. We're going to go mesh, combine, like that, delete history, Alt-Shift D. And then let's select the verts, F9, drag a marquee on this, shift right click and say merge vertices and do it with a really low threshold, and that should weld everything together. So now if we tap 3, if we did everything right, it should kind of smooth out something like what you see here. And that's kind of a pretty cool look. What I'd want to do is something like this. We're going to select all these edges and we're going to bevel them. Okay. So we got that whole thing, shift right click, and we're going to bevel edge. And we're going to take out the segments to 1, like this. Maybe we can make the fraction 0.25, something like that. And then now, if I hit F8 and do Alt-Shift-D, delete history on it, we've got this. And if we tap 3 for this, you can see what it is that we're going to be building. Okay. Now, if we want to crease these, we can hit F10. It got rid of the creasing information that we had here and here, and here, and here, and here, and here. So shift, right click, crease tool, middle mouse drag, just kind of like that. Now if we want this to kind of harden out, we can actually select verts, like this. And we can crease those as well, and that will pull those out. Shift middle mouse right there like that. And because we're kind of curving out with things, we might want to pull this out just a little bit right there like this. Okay. And let's get rid of the wireframe unshaded. So you can kind of see this look where it feels like this thing's been joined together and welded. Now we do have some problems here, and I think it's just a matter of these verts are kind of too far apart from each other. So I'm just going to select them, shift right click, merge vertices to center, tap G for last command. And I'll tap G for last command after I do this one. And this one. Let's tap 3, take a look. So it's still having some issues on here. That tells me maybe there's some geo inside of this. Okay. Let's just tap 3 again. Sometimes this will help if I grab these 3 like this, and then just shift right click, say merge vertices to center. And if that doesn't do it, let's see if I delete this thing out, what's actually going on. There's some extra polygons in there, kind of like that. And let's just go here. And let's select this, shift right click, merge vertices to center, G, 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 like that. And we don't need this geometry. Don't need that geometry. And let's just make sure there's nothing in here. Something is just not playing nice at all. Okay. So sometimes I got to troubleshoot like this, and it is kind of a pain. If I do this right here, what we can do is just rebuild these parts. So I'm going to go object mode, shift right click, and say append to polygon tool. And just click that edge and this edge. I'll tap G for last command. Go across here, tap G. Click here, here, tap G. Like that. And let's tap 3 and see what we got. Okay, now if we can crease this edge and this edge, shift right click, crease tool, middle mouse, and drag out. Now we've got this shape, and we've kind of fixed some of the problems. Let's delete history on it, Alt Shift D, and we got this, and this is our back lid. I'm going to copy the name of this, combine, just like that, and I'll hit Control 1, and you can see, if you remember from the earlier stages what we did, we took this right here and then went and did a modify. So we go to modify, and then we convert smooth mesh preview to polygons, and that's a pretty high resolution model. Put that down to 1, and then it's going to be a matter of going through and maybe reducing some of the pieces that are within here that we don't need. So you can see if I double click on this and hit Control backspace, I don't need that part. This is a flat, Control backspace, so I can get rid of some elements like this, Control backspace, and you can see the silhouette didn't change really at all, so I don't exactly need that geometry for those parts. And just going through and doing some removal of that, I'm just going to go back to this point that we got here, and even at this stage maybe we can kind of take a look and see what our overall polygon count is. And you can see we're a little bit over, we're like above 5,000 right now, so that's where like cleaning up some of this, we'll save some polys on here, and then just making sure that we're efficient everywhere else. I would like to put just maybe some bevels on these parts, and maybe some bevels on here, and maybe on the ends here. So I think that's kind of important to me. So I would kind of like to get rid of some of this geo and get some of those numbers back. So I need to get this under 5,000. So then that way I can steal back some of those polys for some of the beveling that we got going on here. Okay, the final game res mesh is finished up now, and I want to show you a few things about the scene that I did to kind of clean everything up and get everything kind of organized. After I was done, I was able to take the work that I had for the game res, put it in a folder, and then just export this out and say File, Export Selection. And if I choose my binary, I can just get this data out, and then I just combined everything I kind of had from before. So I've got this proxy, the proxy upres, the game res, and then the ZBrush high res. And I also went and added this to layers. So let's just say we've got the game res folder and we want to add that to a layer, we can just go over here and click this icon, and then you can double click the name that it generates, and then I just called it game res and then an underscore and then had layer at the end of it. So this should make it real easy to, you can see we've got the floor that I put in here that's got an infinity kind of wall to it. We've got their scale reference that we have for our mannequin, and this is this with the floor. And then we got the proxy version of the cannon, right? And so this was the very first thing that we kind of started off with. And if we hide the proxy, we've got the proxy upres, and if you remember that stage, that was just upresing that inside of Maya and then pushing that over to ZBrush and giving that us a beginning stage to kind of start sculpting on. And then from there, this is the final game res, and we'll talk about that in just a second. And we also have everything that is used for the high res. Let's turn off the wireframe unshaded on this just because it's so dense. So we've got all the different components that we need in our one scene, and we can kind of easily get to them and kind of see them. I'm going to turn off the scale reference, and I'll turn off the high res and turn on the game res. And let's open up the game res folder and just talk about, eventually we're going to want to get everything that we've got in the high res. We've got wheels underscore high. We want to get those matched up exactly piece by piece, and then have for game, it'll be wheels underscore low. We're just not quite there yet because I'm going to do some work to do some UVs. And so if we do some UVs on maybe, let's say, this wheel, I can transfer it over to this one and to the back wheels, right? And we've got this part here that we can do some work on this and then transfer it back to this over here. So I'm not quite ready to just kind of put everything together. So what I can do is turn on the wireframe unshaded and kind of show you this. And then we'll talk about some of the things that were done to the model. Okay. So I try to be as efficient as you can possibly be. So delete some things away. I also raised up the polygon count to, if we select this here, we're a little bit under 5,500. And I think this is a pretty good number. Let me tell you about what happened to make this kind of drive up. So if I select this and hit Control 1, and we're taking a look at it, what I did was this piece within here, I rounded the ends here, but then instead of just letting it go through and intersect with that shape, letting two shapes intersect, I actually boolean them together, and then I added a bevel in through here to get a nice kind of little transition. So the other thing is we kind of mirrored things. We kind of pulled some of these points down and then made them end kind of coming within through here. I added bevels through here and through here. I just went through and made sure that everything, there was no extra geo in places that was unwanted. I also took some of these and then merged them and collapsed those edges down. So I made it a bit more simplified in here, and then we just merged down to the center and through there. So if I hit Control 1, we'll bring this back. And on the ends of these caps, I just went through, and if you select a, let's say a polygon like this, we can shift right click and we can say triangulate faces, and it triangulated these big faces that we had here pretty easily for me. These things were a little bit chunky, these parts here. So I know I took, let's just say like these two edges here. And if I selected like the edge that was like here, and then here, and then here, and here, let's just say that, right? We can do shift right click and say bevel edge, and we can put our segments down to 1, and we can take this fraction and we can pull it up to the point where it feels like we're kind of rounding this thing out a bit more. And so I just took all this extra geo and then pulled it down to the corner. So that's what was done for these guys to make them get into the resolution that I was looking for. If I select this and I hit Control 1, we can look, we deleted all the bottom faces of this because we don't really ever see that. Now there is a few different vantage angles where you can kind of see, and there's going to be a little bit of a crack in there, but for the most part, I don't think we're going to see that, so that was deleted there. I took this shape, tried to make it as efficient as I possibly could, so I just reduced down any kind of edges that were running in through here, and then I beveled that. So there's a bevel on all these parts. Then I just ran a split from here to here. It was splitting going from here down, and that's a really long polygon, so I just kind of split from here to here. Also, whenever we do the mirror function, so if we shift right click and say mirror, it's going to add split down the center, and so it's going to double these polygon counts in through here. So to get rid of that, you just hit F10. We could double click this and hit Control backspace to get rid of that that stuff there. I'm going to hit undo to get rid of that. and hit Control 1. So you can see that we took away all the geo that was running through the center of this, and also this piece and through here. You can kind of see after I ran the bevels on here, maybe how I took some of the geo and I kind of got rid of that. Now if I hit Control 1 on here, we also took a shape that I had for that middle part, and then I did a Boolean on these things. So I ran this shape versus the cylinder that was in here. I just duplicated it and did a Boolean. So for render modeling, we can go to mesh Booleans and do a difference, and that will give you this here. I had to go and basically take the multi-cut tool and then add some splits going in specific areas, and then just use the triangulate tool to get everything in the order that it's in now. And so I think this is about as efficient as you can probably get this shape and still have some nice bevels and things. So Control 1 to bring everything back. Also added triangulation to this part of these caps and through here, and then I added a little bit of bevel right here on the wheel. You're not going to see the inside part so much, so I didn't worry too much about that and just left that. And I did a lot of work on reducing this part and through here. So I did have some bevels here and through there, but there was a lot of cleanup work to kind of reduce the overall polygon count for this thing within here. You can see I still left everything kind of where these edges are on through here. And let me just have 5 to show you this. And so in the inner part, I was able to take some of the geo right in through here and then collapse it down and make it a little bit more simplified. So you can see I need more curvature on the outer part, but I don't need as much curvature on the inner part. So that's something for you to kind of consider and take a look at as far as patterns and things like that go. And I try to keep things still as round as I possibly could be. So if I tap Control 1 to bring everything back, the only other thing I did maybe for this, if I hit Control 1 on this, is delete the inner part. You don't actually ever see that. Beveling some of this in through here like this. And I also duplicated these up top here and then flipped them underneath. And I had to change the shape to get them to conform to the high-res shape that's on here a little bit. But again, for these pieces, there's nothing on the bottom side of this, so you never really see that. But those are all the different changes that were made to the model. And again, I was going to get this to about a polygon count of under 5,500. And the scene is now like up to date, and it's pretty clean. It's pretty organized and very easy for somebody else to even come along and then pick up the scene and then work on it as well.